everyone, and welcome to the ABCs of RPGs. We are just doing a little final discussion about the RPG that we just finished playing, which is Cats of Catthulhu by Joel Sparks. I am joined by my lovely, well, I guess I didn't introduce myself. I'm Ashley. My pronouns are she, her, and I was the cat herder for this campaign, or the dungeon master, game master, what have you, narrator of our lovely RPG. And I'm joined by my lovely players. We'll start with Christian.
Hi, my name's Christian, and I am a awesome person. I don't know where I was going with that. I totally lost.
Awesome person.
I'm incredible. That's what I am.
My pronouns are he/him. I actually happened to role play my IRL cat as best as I could in the game adventure that we just did. So that was fun, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about it.
Ooh. Spencer.
Hey everybody, I'm Spencer. I played a purebred feral cat whose role in the game was a pussyfoot, basically like to attract attention. He was a friend to all, is with all those three things kind of combined. And I made him look like a Turkish fan cat. So white, medium hair bodied with like an orange tail and like orange ears that kind of come to a point on his face. And two different colored eyes. Because that's apparently very common for Turkish fans. And I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I'm excited to talk more just like about this game because I really enjoyed playing it.
Awesome. And Dalton.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dalton. I played a house cat, a cat crabat, which liked to climb up around on things. And
A ceiling cat.
Ceiling cat.
Yes.
Who had some fun times with his cat crew and his cat neighbor. Very fun. I'm excited to talk about the game, talk about some of the mechanics and stuff, and really get into this. Let's have a fun hour of discussion.
Yeah, so the thing that I really liked about Cats of Cthulhu, I felt like it was very beginner friendly. And I think that has to do with a lot of the mechanics of the game. You really are only using 2 dice. You don't have to do a lot of number crunching for your characters because cats don't do math. And your cats are actually at a slight advantage throughout the game because of how the dice work. 1 and 2 are sad cats, which are negative outcomes for the cats, and 3 through 6 are happy cats, which are positive outcomes for the cats. And even the enemies, when they roll sad cats, that's bad for the cats. Happy cats is good for the cats. So as a cat herder, I did have to adjust kind of how I thought a little bit. I kept wanting to be like, oh, I rolled a 6 and a 6. That's bad for you. Oh, no, it's good for you guys. So what did you guys kind of think about this mechanic of only having 2 dice for kind of your challenges, your checks, things like that?
It makes sense because like out of all dice you would use, what do most people have on hand other than just 2 normal 6-sided dice? So that's super helpful. I think like you were saying, it's very easy to get into. Which, you know, when people think about tabletop RPGs, they want to play the big ones like D&D, Pathfinder, all those high fantasy stuff. But there's a ton of different tabletop RPGs out there, and everybody likes to play different types of games. And I think this game does a really good job at kind of being like, do you want to play like a cute, adorable cat? Like, that's what this game is.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. And I think going off of what you were saying about how, we only have, like, what does everyone have at home, even who doesn't play other more common tabletop role-playing games, like everybody has 2 dice somewhere in a drawer. Everybody has pencils. You can print off the character sheets. And the game itself is very affordable. I bought 2 books to run the game online through DriveThruRPG, and I think the bundle was maybe $20, if that, for both of the books. First book has all of the rules. The second book is expanded. It's like a cat herder's guide. So expanded with more information about rules, more information about how to come up with your own worlds, play NPCs, things like that. But it also included adventures. And the adventure that we played through was the first adventure in there. And I really liked how you could play through that in one evening. I mean, we played through it in several sessions, 2-hour sessions, but that would be something that you could very easily play in one evening as a game night. And I just really appreciate how accessible it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with all that. I think that the time we spent with it was fun, but I don't know how much more fun I would have with it outside of that first like evening playthrough. Personally, like I said, I had a lot of fun with the 4 or so hours we spent with it, but it felt more like an improv exercise than an actual game.
Absolutely.
Like we very rarely failed to do anything we tried to do. Failure was very hard, and I think a lot of the cool stuff that you get from RPGs is the unexpectedness of failure. Like if we just get to do everything we say, we're just kind of having a conversation about what these made up cats are doing, and there's no like outside influence forcing us out of our comfort zone and out of what we want to do and like having to do like some problem solving. So
Yeah.
like a very fun game night, fun little like intro to like what an RPG could be like if you want to play a little fun game with your family for an evening. Um, but I
I
was
know
missing a lot of the depth I like to see in a lot of stuff in like the games I play.
I know what you mean because like it's a game where there's not it doesn't seem like there's a lot per like progression. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, but
Progression.
yes,
Progression.
progression.
Are we gonna have to talk
Um,
like we're like anime cat girls and we have to sneak in like
Sure.
meows, purrs, and yawns and stuff into all of our sentences?
Joe, yeah. Uh, but But like even Call of Cthulhu, where there's no like level up system, you could still improve your skills, right? How you interact with the world, that was its progression. Where D&D, it's like, oh, every level up you get health points, you get abilities, you get blah blah. Blah. Call of Cthulhu is just like, no, you can just maybe improve your skills each session. It seems like Cats of Catthulhu, um, it does seem pretty stationary as characters. You gain the story and experiences. Like I thought that was pretty cool, where we recognize insect god servants and shiny sticks can open doors and everything like that. But yeah, it seemed like there's not as much progression, but that kind of goes back into the simplicity of it, right? So
Yeah, like I don't know that it needs progression if you're only meant to be playing it for like 1 4-hour session and then rolling up new cats to do a new thing if you want to play it again. I don't think the progression is a necessary thing for a game.
yeah,
I think the problem is that yeah, you don't necessarily need like 10 levels or whatever your cat can level up to. With the length that these adventures, or at least this adventure was, right? You can do them pretty quickly. And I'd be curious to know like exactly like what Joel's intentions were for designing this game, right? Because it definitely feels like, yeah, like kind of a gateway into this world of TTRPGs, which is really great. But I did feel, kind of as Dalton was saying, I felt that almost my identity was lacking in like how can I play this character, right? This Tiger Dreamer. It sounds like kind of this monk thing that has, these so, like I didn't really know what I could do with it. Like it seemed cool. It is like, okay, can I go in this trance state and that helps me out in some way? And it's like, well, I've kind of felt like I could just come up with things and then yeah, there was no like clear structure. So it's like, sure, yeah, like and you're successful because of the nature of how success is being more heavily weighed on the dice, right? When you roll them. So I kind of felt like, and then this kind of goes into the narrative as well, is like I felt like there wasn't as much substance as I'd like to get out of it to kind of bring me back and and dive a little bit deeper. Um, you know, and I don't think that necessarily has to add a whole lot of complexity, but understanding that at least with this role as a tiger dreamer, like I have this one ability or two abilities, and it can help me out in certain areas, and I can at least understand like, oh, I have abilities or I have spells playing as a cat, you know, this cat and this character, and I can use these to benefit us in certain areas. I didn't felt like there was like this you know, that ability was afforded to me. You know, yeah, we kind of just went along with the flow. So again, if Joel was going for a really great just introduction to role playing and improv, then yeah, it was awesome. I mean, we got to role play cats and everything, and but I definitely wish there was more. And we can talk about like narrative and stuff too later.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, I think you guys bring up really good points, and something that I kind of felt like was in book 2, there was a section about how to play this game for kids. And I almost felt like the game that we played was already made for kids. And I almost feel like maybe that's kind of why we're feeling this lack of depth is maybe um maybe there's some areas where like a little bit of complexity could have been added. Maybe it could have been a little bit easier to fail, where it was more of a 50-50 chance of if it was a happy or a sad cat instead of a 2/3 chance happy, 1/3 chance sad. Um, and I do think that there definitely could have been more structure for some of the roles, like especially for Tiger Dreamer, like you were saying, Christian, because it kind of just said in the book, like if
Page
there's a tiger
24.
dreamer, they have this like I guess more so I mean for the adventure that I ran, like if the tiger dreamer has this dream and like things just kind of happen to you because you have that role as
Mhm.
opposed to
Mm.
you actually being able to do anything with it, um which I think kind of takes away a bit of your agency as a player and makes it difficult for you to come up with a bit of an identity for your player because things are just kind of happening to you instead of you
Mhm.
choosing to do things or um I don't know,
That's
having
so
kind of this
Yeah,
psychic ability
absolutely.
or
That's so interesting because when I was reading through these roles, right, which are like classes in like other tabletop RPGs and everything, when I was looking at like Tiger Dreamer, like it says on page 24, like typical challenges, it says can only smell when something isn't right. With ease, can comfort a human, interrupt a magic ritual, notice unnatural behavior, recognize that pattern is mystical, or with luck can comfort a dog, communicate with an alien being, identify what a mystical pattern might mean, which is it seems like a lot of like the mythos, right? The mythos that's kind of happening in this. Whereas like my role, which was a pussyfoot, always attracts attention. With ease can appeal for help, beg for food, distract a human, recognize exotic food, or with luck can appeal for help to a dog, distract a cat, understand riding a human vehicles. And I think the things that stood out to me is like pussyfoots can appeal for help to a dog, where tiger dreamers can comfort a dog. But both of those seem very similar, only
Mm.
slightly different, right? Just like one's more mystical and one's not. So I agree. When I was reading through even the roles, I think those roles seem very similar, where the other ones felt more distinct. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of lends itself to what I think the game is like an easy to pick up like night, like the way that the types of cats were all written were all super evocative and like fully built as character ideas, and you didn't really need to do much else to add to it. And I think
mhm.
right.
that that is a positive if you're looking at it from the perspective that you need to teach all the people this thing, and we want to get going, and then we play the game
Play it
for
in one
a
evening.
few hours in one evening. Yeah, like you don't need to come to the table with a fully written character and like huge backstory. Like you're a ceiling cat. You like to hang up around, climbing around. You want
Yeah.
to keep like a watchful eye over all the humans. And like here's a full character with like motivations and conflict and stuff ready for you to go. So you don't have to
Yeah.
like do all the hard work of like coming up with all that. And that is one of the more intimidating things I think for people unfamiliar with TTRPGs is having that whole narrative and stuff ready to go. Other aspect being, what do I do? And I don't know if this game did a good job with that part, but
Yeah.
The okay, yeah, that's the situation, but what can I do? What actions can I take is always a question I get very early
Yeah.
on from new people.
There's almost too much freedom that it can be paralyzing
Mhm.
in this game because you can do whatever you want.
Mhm.
And you just roll to see if you succeed at that, but sometimes that's almost too much freedom.
Hmm.
Instead of like D&D, for example, when you're in combat, it's very specifically outlined. You can take your movement, you can have 6 seconds of speech, you can take your action, you can take your bonus action. And then like a little bit more free form during non-combat sessions. And even for combat, it was kind of it was outlined in Cats of Catthulhu what you could do. Like you can hurt, you can shove, you can grab, whatever it is. There's like 5 of them, I think. But I feel like maybe giving more examples of like what can your cats actually do could be a little bit more helpful um, when going into this. The other point I kind of wanted to talk about, going back to something that you guys had mentioned before, was kind of like length set up for like one evening and things like that. And it was kind of cool because the adventure that we played, there was like a little bit of an epilogue section, and it talked about how there is a larger adventure at foot. This is kind of just supposed to be the hook into that larger adventure. And I do wonder if perhaps some of the criticisms you guys had would be different had we played a bit of that larger adventure, because we played for 2 2-hour sessions, and not until the last half hour of the last session did we really get some interesting, compelling stuff with dealing with this taxidermied bird that had bugs coming out of it, and this cage that was spawning these bugs, and a frog god in the pond out back. Like all of this happened in the very last half hour of us playing,
And we messed up.
and you guys did mess up. You guys did fail at the very end. So I do wonder if maybe different adventures or how you kind of go into it could be a little bit more intriguing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it took a while to get there, but it was because we were having fun with the point of the game, which is to be cats.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
like as it's written in the vibes I got from the rule book is like the important thing is the cats, and then like there's like this sprinkling of like weird shit that will happen sometimes in the background.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and like the point is to just fuck around and be little feline critters, messing with each other, messing around. Um, and I think that's kind of like how we played it and how it went. Um,
Yeah, I think I don't know. I wonder if like you were saying, the longer adventure, the more exposure we get to this tabletop RPG, like maybe more like of the concern, like what Don was talking about, his concerns about like, yeah, when we were in it, we weren't really sure what to do. And I definitely felt that too, is like we had the cage there, we knew it was spawning bugs, but we're like, how do we stop this? Like that was one of the things we were like, what do we do here? And I wonder if just like more exposure to it, like the longer campaigns, we get more into the mindset of being a cat. Because when I realized, or when we discussed it like before about like how to stop it, we were just like, oh, let's use Zoe's dream and throw it in the pond because we thought that was like the game telling us this is what you should do. Where like now that I think back of it, I'm like, oh, the cage, it was kind of shaped like a ball. Cats like to hit balls. We should have just whacked it or like had something smash it till it was destroyed. But
I think
I don't
my
know.
solution of covering it up with a blanket was very cat-like.
It was very cat-like.
Oh.
You can't see it.
Yeah, if I can't
I don't
see
know.
it,
Do
it doesn't
cats have
exist.
object permanence? I don't know. I think cats have object permanence. They know where their food dishes are
But
and
I think
stuff.
that was less a problem with like the system itself and more with like the adventure. Like normally with
First-
puzzles, you want the solution at least telegraphed somewhere, for the players to pick up on
You-
somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you mean
Need-
by that? Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Well, like the solution, quote unquote, was to break the cage.
Right.
There was no way for the players to know, I don't think, that breaking the cage was the solution. There was no like threads to pull on to come there, to come to that solution, just because like I don't know. And I don't know how you would really say that or telegraph that in any subtle way. Because
Yeah.
when there's no threads to pull on to get there, you just kind of like stumbling around trying whatever, and there's no real endpoint, like thing that's guiding us towards breaking it. We had a thing that was guiding us, and it was apparently bad, allegedly.
And
Yeah.
I allegedly. And I think that's maybe something that I could have done better as the cat herder. Um, I tried to convey to you guys that when the door of the cage was open, bugs were not spawning in it. So I tried to kind of convey every time the door of the cage was open and shut. But I think maybe it was too subtle where you could see that, because essentially what it was that if the cage was completely a sphere and the door was able to be shut, so the pattern was able to be completed, then bugs could spawn in it. But
Mhm.
even if you could just rip the door off and destroy the door, that would work. Because when the door's open, bugs can't spawn anymore. So I'm wondering if maybe I could have been a little bit more obvious in that regard. Um,
I don't know if
Well,
that's your fault, but I definitely did not
yeah.
pick up on the door being open stopped things to spawn. I did not pick up on
Yeah.
that at all.
And yeah, I would say I don't think that's your fault at all. I think the goals of adventures or pre-made adventures is supposed to take the weight off of game masters. That's the whole point, is that like you can come up with your own stuff. Obviously, that's one of the best parts about tabletop RPGs. But I think like when you're writing an adventure, it should kind of be laid out for you so you kind of understand and are able to convey it to your players just fine. But going off of what Dalton's saying, like more threads, an easy way that I think other games do this, or even video games, and Christian can correct me if I'm wrong, but usually before the bigger puzzle or the bigger reveal, there's a smaller example of it. Maybe not exactly the same, but like a smaller example of it that later on you're like, oh, I do this thing. Like we could have had like maybe like another, not like a cage, but something else that spawned bugs that it was glass and we just stepped on it or we just hit it and it destroyed.
Mhm.
And then later on, when we get to the cage and it's spawning these bigger bugs that are like stinging all of the inside people, then we're like, oh, we have to destroy the cage because we smashed the other thing and it stopped.
that worked.
So
To that point, yeah, there's very much this idea when you're introducing mechanics to players that when you first introduce it, it should be very clear and very easy to access that and complete whatever it is. And then there should be another moment where the player is challenged a little bit further, where they're practicing this mechanic, right? And then there's mastery of that mechanic, and then you push that even further, right? And you can play around with that, but the idea is that you take you know, like you breadcrumb it, right? Like you want to lead the player to the solution, but make it so that they feel like they found it on their own, right?
Right.
and it is a balance. It's very much a balance. That's why game design's not easy, but and it depends again on the designer's intentions, right? That's very important, because yeah, like I I agree with that suggestion, and I think it goes back to also the narrative issues I have with the adventure here. Is that there didn't seem to be, well, first there wasn't really much consequence in killing the bugs, and because of us just like swatting away at the bugs and killing them over and over and over again, we never really learned anything from that. So I think even if this is for newer players, I think it's okay to have consequences and have failures, because you're going to learn from that. And obviously you're not going to kill all the characters off outright. This is a much lighter take on Call of Cthulhu. But there does need to be consequence there, and then there needs to be learning there, right? And then that can, along the adventure, that can take them to the end encounter or whatever. Because again, I feel like for most of the adventure, nothing about this world felt Cthulhu at all. And then we got to the bugs were kind of weird, but and then we got to this bird cage thing, and then these frogs, and it's like, this didn't make sense. I as a player, if this is supposed to be roleplay focused, I want to find breadcrumbs. I want to figure out pieces of this world as I go, and I'm like, ooh, this is really interesting and mysterious, and I don't totally understand what it means, but maybe we'll figure it out, right? And we keep going, and I get that. Again, in this world you build around cats, it's weird. It's hard because we can't really read, we can't do math, but but we have to have some kind of magical cat NPC or something that is kind of giving us the story details other than just humans kind of falling to the ground, right? I felt like that was missing, and it kind of ties in with everything we're talking about.
I think that might have been a little bit of a mismatch in how we were expecting our player cats to behave versus how the game expected them to behave. I think we were all playing the cats, I don't want to say dumb, but less intelligent than a human would be. When I don't know if the game really is meant to do that. In the game, that's what humans are supposed to be, the dense, silly, dumb ones. And the cats are supposed to actually be the smart, intelligent ones who can see through the veil and are the smarter ones. And we were having fun playing dumb little silly cats.
Yep.
Right.
Which I think is just perfectly valid, just maybe not exactly what the game expected and the adventure expected.
That was,
I don't know. Yeah.
That was probably my favorite part, though. The creation of the cat, of our cats, was, I thought, really detailed and in depth, and I really enjoyed it. Because going into this, I was like, I don't know how to make a cat. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. But then, it's a cat. Can I just go to the shelter and pick one?
Right. I latched onto the roles because I'm like, oh, I get that. These are classes. But then when it came to mix and purebred, feral, house show cats, I was like, I don't know. But then being able to kind of read through how all of those combine to kind of affect, like you were saying, Dalton, a ceiling cat, and kind of had that kind of oh, this is what you like to do. I was like, oh, I know exactly what I want to be now. So, yeah.
I do want to talk about the solution to the puzzle real quick before we move too further away from that.
Yeah.
And I didn't read the adventure book, but one thing I like, and maybe it alluded to this somewhere in the adventure book, is that the solution prescribed in the adventure is a suggestion to the puzzle, and you just kind of let the players fuck around and fail twice, and then whatever the third thing they try is correct. And they get to have that aha moment of, oh, hell yeah, I solved it, even though whatever they were going to do, and sure, the first thing that they justified good enough after the first failure, it's yeah, good job, you figured it out. And that becomes part of the lore going forward, is that, oh yeah, that was the solution. So I tried to cover it up, and sure, that didn't work, but whatever the next thing we tried was the correct thing, even though sure, it's not what the book said, but that doesn't really matter that much. We're gonna move
That's
past
so
it.
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, what you were gonna say, Spencer?
Oh, I just like making my cat. I didn't know anything about like originally, like I was thinking like, oh, I want to be a house cat, Pussyfoot, because I want to be like I would have a house cat. I would have like a mixed breed house cat, so that's what I want to be. But then reading through how everything mixed together, because like having your role and then having whether you're a feral house cat, show cat, puts you into a different category because they have that
Cat. Fury.
graph.
Category.
They have that graph on page 12 or yeah, that kind of shows you like, oh, these types of things put you into different categories. And I saw that being a Pussyfoot uh purebred feral cat made me a friend to everyone. I was like, oh, I want to play a cat like that. So I thought they did a really good job at that. And I don't know cat breeds, so I just looked up like cat breeds and I saw a Turkish van and I was like, yeah, that, I'm gonna be that. And then they have two different colored eyes. I'm like, oh, sweet, even better. So I thought that discovery and that kind of thing that really helped me get into the mindset of being a cat. I thought
Yeah,
that
all
was really cool.
the descriptions and stuff of all the cats were super evocative and super well written. I
Yeah.
loved reading through all of that early stuff. That was all very cool and very inspiring, I think, for all the people playing the game.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Really gets you in the mindset of like this game. I know there's the Cthulhu s stuff, but I feel like it could just be like hey, cat RPG, cat tabletop RPG, and it could work well that way too. So
Yeah, and I think I don't know. I think maybe adding higher stakes to it would help that be really enjoyable. Where like, oh, yeah, maybe it's not the most exciting thing ever to try and get a fluttering ribbon out of like a bush or something. Um, but having some of these mundane tasks and maybe being like, oh, you're trying to get this fluttering ribbon, but you get stabbed by some thorns on the way and you have to kind of deal with some more consequences and it becomes more of a puzzle and becomes more complicated. And I think that like just making sure that there are kind of those stakes and that chance for failure will really elevate the game, even if it is for beginners, you know. Which kind of goes back to a lot of the points that we were saying earlier is that we kind of missed that kind of chance for failure because that's what's really fun. What's really fun is you have 5 hit points left and the dragon is about to kill all of you, but then you land the final blow. Um, and that's not what this game is, but it definitely doesn't have to be, oh, I kill the bug every time I try to
Hmm.
because I'm a scrapper and that's what I'm good at and it's a bug and a bug has no chance.
yeah,
Um, and I don't know if that's more of like a mechanics thing or if that's like an adventure thing or a little bit of both. Um, I don't really know where I was going with that, but that's kind of,
I don't know. I
yeah.
think that felt kind of, at least to me, as I was going through it, felt intentional. That like from a game design perspective, that like you're a scrapper, so
Mhm.
you get to be good at fighting, and you're the go to for the fighting things,
Right. The
and you'll
right
all
cat for the
the
yeah.
job.
right cat for the job.
So that felt a little bit intentional, but I don't know how successful that is for like a group of players that want more complexity in
Right.
things. Another just kind of like mismatch between the game and the players. Not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe not for us.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Maybe it is that we are not necessarily the target audience for this game. Maybe the target audience is a group of people who have never played tabletop role playing games before. And that is actually something that the RPG talked about in I believe it was book 2, The Cat Herder's Guide, is that experienced players who are really good at the number crunching and things like that are actually going to have a harder time playing this game because they're not as open to the improvisation and things like that. And maybe that is just kind of the issue that we are running into a little bit is that, you know, we've at this point, even Christian, who was our newbie player, has been playing tabletop role playing games for a year now. We have no newbies in our group anymore. Um, so I think that's kind of part of it. The one point I did kind of want to talk about was kind of my experience as the cat herder.
I was gonna ask,
Um,
how was
yeah,
it being presented on the other side?
yeah. So this was my first time running a campaign before. And on the one hand, I felt like it was really enjoyable. It wasn't super rules heavy, so I didn't have to constantly be flipping through books to be like, "Oh, this is how it works. This is how you chase or whatever."
Mhm.
Um, but on the other hand, I wish maybe there was a little bit more guidance. Um, I didn't really know what I was supposed to do when you got the little girl to chase you, Spencer. I like, what do I do? And like when she like that wasn't how you were supposed to solve getting into the library, and I kind of had to improvise that, and it worked and it was great, but I feel like I wish that I almost had a little bit more guidance just being a new person to it. And
Yeah.
I love improvisation, so I think it was really fun and I really enjoyed it, but I think it would have been helpful to have maybe a few more suggestions along the way about how to run it.
Mhm.
Um, but I think also on the flip side, you can't predict exactly what every single group is going to do. There's only so many things you can predict are going to happen.
Yeah.
And in this world that is so freeform and so improvised, there's an infinite number of possibilities.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You guys could have called the gardener in, and the gardener was able to kill the bugs too with some pesticides or insecticides.
Oh.
Um, the gardener could have tried to open, you could have tried to break a window to get into the library. There's any number of things, but those weren't written into the adventure.
Yeah.
But what was the
Um,
prescribed, like, correct way to get into
the
that
like
room?
the correct way to get into the room was that you had to try to steal the keys from the butler. A merry chase ensues, but the butler doesn't have the right keys on him. But you didn't end up doing that because the butler got stung by a bug, so it
Hmm.
didn't go quite the way that was planned. Um, and then once you're able to get the keys, which were in the butler's room, they it was supposed to be a combination of luck and you guys working together. So, like, a cat acrobat being able to kind of jump and get there, but needing a 2-footologist to know how to stick it in the lock, and needing a scrapper to kind of be able to grab the key and turn it. So, it was kind of just a combination of you guys attempting to work together to open the door.
Hmm.
But I think the way that you did it almost makes more sense, is just accepting that, hey, we're cats, we don't have opposable thumbs. This is a really good opportunity to try and overcome this solution.
That,
So I think you guys handled it really well, and I just think that that's kind of a little bit of a challenge for a new cat herder or a new game master, is kind of knowing what to do with that improvisation.
you mentioned a couple times where it seemed like it was expecting us to do things like in combination, like a together act as multiple cats. And it seemed like that was written in as solutions as multiple things. Even if it wasn't like an actual action, but like Donald was saying, us not knowing what to do, I wish there was like a mechanic just written in, just like how they say, like, oh, like you have to hold a pencil in your mouth and stuff like that when you're carrying, because you can only carry one thing. I wish there was unless there already is, and maybe I'm missing it, but I wish there was like another little section of like, all cats work together or something like that. And it's like, sometimes you may not have some tasks that seem impossible to do alone. With having other cats on your side, you can do it together or something like that.
I do agree, because there definitely wasn't like one set rule like that, but that's how the adventure seemed like it was written, was like everybody needs to work together to get this done.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it would have been nice to have like a section, because it does say like, hey, for some situations there's not going to be a right cat for the job, but it doesn't really elaborate on what that consequence is for the players.
Yeah.
It Yeah, and this kind of goes back to like just the adventure setup where like you might not have a scrapper, you know, you
Absolutely.
may not have, so you can't really rely on like, you know, having to have that one thing, right? So
You
like,
didn't have a 2 foot tall, just.
No.
yeah, which then it goes back to role playing, but I can also see like in the adventure, it's like, okay, well, if you having multiple ways to solve this, right? That is like makes sense for different classes, right? So if you have like the what was Dalton's cat
Cat
specifically, the
Kerbat.
cat cravat, thank you. Maybe we, like, if we explore a little bit, like we can actually see that there is a window above the door, like one of those window slits above the door that actually just kind of swivels, right? Yeah. And if we have a cat cravat, then and we realize that, then with successful rolls or whatever, can get up there and tap it open. And then
And
from
like let
inside,
you
I
in
don't
from
know,
the
but
inside.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know from there, but you know
Unlock
what I
the
mean,
door.
like,
Yeah.
but I'll have multiple ways to go about that because you can't rely on one specific role or another.
Yeah.
And that makes it more interesting because then you can think about like, okay, like how should we go about this? There's multiple options here we have. But yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely the strengths here are that you get to really practice that improv, practice that role playing. I think like if you have a group of people that that are more numbers focused and kind of like don't can't role play, don't feel comfortable role playing, they kind of want to just always get to combat, like I think this is a great experience to kind of like flex those muscles a bit and work with that, and understanding that's kind of what you're doing coming into it, because I think that's really the strong suit here,
Mhm.
as we mentioned.
I was gonna say, Ash, you mentioned that you're hoping that there'd be more ways that as you're reading through the adventure to kind of talk about how to run it, especially since this seems to be targeted for like how the game is set up for like newer people or like a easier, simpler RPG or even more roleplay focused. I've noticed from doing the starter sets of Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu, in Call of Cthulhu, when we did that, the first adventure has a lot of hand holding, is how I would describe it. Has a lot of like, hey, here's how this can go to this. Here's how you can do this, blah, blah, blah. And it even says in the adventure, like, hey, we give a lot of information for new game masters in the first one. In the first adventure, we give a little bit, we still give good information, but not as much in the second adventure. And in the third adventure, we just kind of give you the basic information. You kind of take it from there. So it kind of like handholds you through each of the adventures and slowly lets off. And I even noticed, like, as kind of a more experienced game master, in the second adventure that I ran through for you guys, it gave suggestions for how to do stuff. And I read it once and I was just like, oh, okay. Like I already knew, like I already kind of understood how to handle that kind of stuff. But it was good because I recognized, oh, that's nice that they, for a very complicated game, they still gave information about how to handle, like you said, improvisational moments. Um, so yeah, but
That's really cool. That's really good to know, and I think maybe that's something that could be improved for this game, is having a little bit more of that. Because I was definitely like a little, like, I don't know, a little overwhelmed starting it. I think the one
you
thing
did
that I
great.
really would have, oh, thank you. I think the one thing I really wished they had was a map. That's all I wanted, was a map of a house.
There's no maps.
There's no
That
maps.
was all you.
That was all me. I just wish because it'd be so easy. It's 3 maps. You have
Yeah.
1 map of the outside, 1 map of the layout of the inside, and 1 map of the layout of for like the main floor, and 1 map of the layout of the second floor.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't even know what rooms connect to what. So I just have to be like, all right, I'm just going to say that all of these rooms are off of the hallway and there's a staircase and there's only 1 room you can go in upstairs because the other ones don't matter. And that's kind of what I did. So I wish I had a map.
I didn't even notice. I think you did a great job at making the map that I didn't even notice that you didn't. One original.
Um,
I
and
think
I
that
think, sorry, what were you going to say, Dalton?
I was to say that that's kind of like expectations. Like it's one of the strengths you said was that it was affordable and easy to pick up, but
Absolutely.
quality art and stuff like that, it costs money and time and effort,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
kind of like leveling expectations for like what you're
It
buying
is.
and what you're getting out of it is a part of the hobby. And
Yeah.
um knowing that you as an individual you're gonna have to put more effort into things
Yeah, when you get
when you buy
3,
it.
yeah, 3 books, which is the kind of like, as you could say, player's handbook, the cat herder's guide, and then the third one, which is more adventures, right? So,
I never bought the 3rd book,
oh, so
so
just those two. Okay, so these 2 books that kind of get you started at $20 compare, which is half the price of what normally one of those books costs. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Is like because we're making it so affordable, so accessible, you
Yeah, you're
have
not
to
gonna
make
get all the bells and
sacrifices
whistles.
somewhere.
yeah.
Absolutely. So I think that's a really good point. Um, yeah, so just kind of like in summary, what I'd love to hear from you guys are 2 main points of what one, what you think went really well, and one, what you think kind of even better yet. So, what is kind of a criticism you have, and how you would kind of make it better if you were designing this game. Um, so, I think for me, what went really well for this game is I just really appreciated how accessible it was, which is kind of a point that we've been echoing this whole session that we've been discussing this game. It's cheap, everybody has dice, everybody has pens or pencils and paper. Like, even if you can't print off the character sheets, I don't think you really need to. It's nice, it has the basic rules on it, but even if you can't, you don't need that much. You could do it on some index cards if you had to. Um, so I just really appreciated how accessible it is. I thought that because it's not so rules heavy, it's really easy to pick up. Um, but even better yet, I feel like I wish that there were still some stakes to the game. I wish it was a little bit easier to fail. Because I think that adds um a bit of enjoyment to the game is knowing that you could fail and then succeeding anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. I picking up off that. Yeah, I think, as we said, I think it did a really good job with the player's handbook and everything, like preparing us to really get you know get in the mind of a feline and role play that, and kind of gave us, yeah, those options, like different breeds and different roles, and kind of like who they are, as in the real world, like different breeds, different cats have their own personalities, right? So kind of have fun with that, which was awesome. And it's very relatable because, I mean, a lot of people have cats, or family members have cats, um and everything. So, um but I what I would say is, even better yet, I think what could improve on this game is, um yeah, probably. I would probably start with the dice system. And I think again, there's less. It's kind of hard to fail things. The stakes really aren't there, and I think I'd start there and add something more. Add something. I understand, I guess, like the whole idea of like, oh, cats can't do math, so we don't even work with numbers. So, and all this. But at a point, it's like, well, this is just a role playing game. Even in
Right.
D&D, like numbers don't make sense, right? Or damage and stuff. But
Right.
you kind of
It's
have to
just
have a
guidance.
line that you draw and be like, okay, this is kind of where we're balancing things. And I think changing that up a little bit, whether it's like adding maybe more specific abilities that a role has and how that interacts with the dice, I think could go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are some really great points, Christian. I really agree. I think there's definitely a way to kind of delve into those dice, whether it's like, oh, it's not a 2/3, 1/3 chance, or maybe it's kind of like adding a little bit more guidance of like what you get to do when you succeed when you're scrapping. Like if you have this level of success, then you can kill the bug. If you have this level of success, you can push the bug down, but you don't kill it outright. And if you fail, you get stung. Which, like, yes, the mechanic kind of had that in there, but even for getting stung, it was really hard to get stung. It was a lot of times where it was just like nothing happens, like it was a tie. So you just do it again. So I think you
Yeah.
have some really good points there, Christian.
And again, this can be basic stuff, right? Like, you know, basic abilities, nothing too complex. Obviously, we want to keep this simple, but yeah.
Right. Just add just like that little bit more depth to it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a ton of fun with it. I think that all of the descriptions of all the cats was super evocative, and very inspiring. I think that it hit the right notes for a an accessible thing that you could teach very easily and get people playing very quickly and have a nice fun little jaunty evening role playing as silly little cats.
Yeah.
Um, and I would definitely I would be very more than willing to set this down in front of my family if we were like looking to do something after dinner, um or just kind of like me as someone who has some more experience with some tabletop RPG stuff and introducing it to a group of people who don't and
Yeah.
want like a taste of something without having to go through the whole rigmarole of spending 8
Mhm.
hours teaching like the mechanics of the game just so they can make a character. um
Right.
I think that this game hit a lot of those great notes, and if it had the right group of people, I think that it would be very successful in grabbing people and making people want to play more tabletop RPGs and have some more fun with in the role playing space.
Yeah. I would say, uh, just going off of what everybody's been saying, but like in what Dalton was saying, I think the game does a really good job at making you feel like a cat. Like all the different customization options, the rules, everything like that. Thought that was really cool. Even the rules of paw, which is like the rule of one thing, which is you can carry one thing, but you have to hold it in your mouth the entire time. That gets you into the game. That's really
Right.
smart.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good job at kind of being like, oh, just little things that make you feel like a cat. Um, I really enjoyed that. I think that it really got me into a game that I never thought I'd want to be a cat. Yes. So I thought it was cool. I would say the only thing to improve is just going off of it seems like the game really wants to encourage all the cats to work together, and I think that's fantastic. I think that's a good way to get people who are sitting around a table to get together like, "Oh, you're this role, let's all do the thing." So I think adding to under the rules of paw, just add on like another rule that it's like we were discussing before, all cats work together or something like that. And it's like
Right.
when the task seems impossible, each cat role can come together to solve a solution or something like that. To
Right.
start getting people into the mindset of like the problems being presented sometimes we have to have multiple people working together to solve.
Right.
So, which is like every tabletop RPG, right? So,
Absolutely.
and that could again tie into rolling, like have a assist mechanic or something, right?
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely. I think
I
that'd
don't
be
know,
really
but
cool. Where like you can, because it has kind of these rules for like, oh, you can go out in a blaze of glory and have like this automatic success, but you sacrifice a life for it. And we never really got to a situation that was high stakes enough where we even needed that. But maybe having something where it's like you get to roll an extra die because the cat acrobat is helping you jump up to get the key into the lock. So I think even just having like just a few sentences as like one more mechanic to add to the game, like Spencer was saying, would be really helpful and really kind of encourage that interplay of the players together.
Yeah.
Which, like you said, is the fun of a tabletop role playing game.
Mhm.
That's the big thing, is that you're playing with a game master and typically at least two other players.
Yeah.
So having kind of that encouragement to work together is really important.
Mhm.
Um, any other final thoughts? Any questions in the chat? Anything like that before we finish our session and sign off?
No, who was the person that wrote it again?
Joel Sparks.
Joel
Joel
Sparks.
Sparks.
Thanks, Joel Sparks,
Thank you, Joel Sparks.
for a
yeah,
Thank
fun
you,
little
Joel
game.
Sparks.
You said it was on Drive
Yeah.
Through RPG. You got it right, Ash?
Drive Through
yeah.
RPG was where I got it from.
It's a good place.
There was some sort of the Drive Through RPG was promoting a bunch of animal based RPGs and selling them at a discount. So that was one of the ones that I got that I thought was really interesting. So that's how I got exposed to it. But yeah, so for ABCs of RPGs, we used books 1 and 2 of Cats of Catthulhu by Joel Sparks. Thank you, Joel Sparks. We used Roll20 as our online platform, which was really helpful. We also used Hero Forge to create our little avatars of our cats. So we really appreciate all of those resources. And yeah, thank you so much for all tuning in and keep
Just,
learning.
just letting you know, right now, Cats of Catthulhu on Drive Through RPG is the PDF is only $4.95, and the softcover book is only $10. So,
It's affordable.
but who knows when you're watching this? It could change. So,
It could change. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this talk specifically has gotten me really excited for hopefully at some point I would love to you know work on like a little game jam of our own, make our own little one shot, or something
Yeah.
we can expand on or something. But
Ooh,
I was like during
yeah.
this, I think it would be very fun for us to not necessarily publish, but put together a zine where we each contribute one thing to the zine, and whatever we want to add
Absolutely. And
into
we
it
could
can be
put
whatever,
it on
whether it's
Drive
like
Through RPG.
a little micro game or like an addition to one of the games we played, or some little tool or a little booklet.
that'd be
Putting
cool.
together a
I think
zine
that'd
is
be great.
always fun, but that's just like the old school punk in me, and like coming from zine culture. I hate myself
Yeah.
for saying that, but
I
self-published
just
zines
Yeah.
are sick as hell, and we need more of them.
If any of you guys watching have any ideas for an RPG that you really want to see, some cool themes or anything like that, hit us up in the comments. Maybe you'll see us make one in the future. So
All right,
heck yeah.
cool. Well, I think we're good for
awesome.
good hanging out today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in and keep learning.
Thanks.
Bye.